Welcome to Small Spark Theory. This podcast is designed as a collection of thoughts, ideas and practical tips on using marginal gains to help your agency new business endeavours. Small Spark Theory is created and hosted by me, Lucy Mann of Gunpowder Consulting. Welcome back to Small Spark Theory. We have got for you today the perfect summer episode. So before you actually start listening, I suggest that you pour yourself a G&T, go and find a sun lounger, a hammock, a deck chair, somewhere comfy, and settle in for a discussion around the future of your agency. Now, I'm talking to agency founders and future founders all the time who are thinking about not only running their agency, but what the future might look like. What's the end game? So we have for you today a fantastic guest, Tony Walford. Tony works with the mergers and acquisitions business Green Square. Tony and I have known each other for a number of years now. Our paths have crossed many times with different agencies. So I'm delighted that Tony is here with us today to share some of his secrets around what makes a brilliant deal and some tips for those founders and future founders on how they can think about the future and shaping their businesses for a successful exit. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit, for the sake of the listeners and anybody that hasn't come across you or Green Square before, tell us a bit about your background and what led you to setting up Green Square.
Okay, well, I'm 53 now, and I've been lucky to have had a fairly interesting time. I did a business degree and started my career at Midland Bank Group on their grad scheme, where I qualified as a chartered accountant and corporate treasurer before moving into investment banking. Whilst I love the M&A side, I did find some of the characters in investment banking lacking in, shall we say, personality. And as time went on, I wanted to ensure I didn't end up completely stuck in the city career-wise. So I took a role at the IT firm Unisys, heading up planning and forecasting. 6 months later, there was a major restructuring and lots of people scarpered as they are fearful of change. But change brings opportunity, so I just sat there to see what would happen. I had a great boss who was really supportive and always championed me to the board. And as a result, a guy with really long arms reached over the pond from Philadelphia, tapped me on the shoulder and asked if I'd like to be CFO of the UK's biggest bit. And I said, yes.
Lovely.
So it's right place, right time, really. After 2 years of lots of reorganisation and travel, I got headhunted by UK PLC to be COO of a group of marketing services agencies within the PLC. This looked pretty interesting, as I'd always been fascinated by marketing. 3 months in, the CEO took me aside to tell me they had taken me on as I was ex-City and they wanted to IPO or float the marketing services side separately. I felt about laughing and said it wouldn't be possible due to a myriad of reasons, partly financial, but also because of the fact that a lot of the management within the agencies weren't particularly happy with the way the group was being run. But I said I'd do an MBA if he liked. He didn't like, but me and the Marcoms Group CEO went off and got some venture capital funding from 3i. And some debt from the Bank of Scotland to do the deal, which we did in 1997. So we bought 2 agencies, brand consultancy CLK and design agency Michael Peters. We merged them together to create Corporate Edge and grew it organically and via acquisition to be the second largest independent design and Marcoms group in the UK by the millennium. In 2005, I was asked to consult on M&A deals to a boutique, things they were doing in particular. I had a great team at Corporate Edge, so I went part-time and very much enjoyed being back in the M&A environment. So I got some fabulous market insight and sold Corporate Edge in late 2007. We missed the opportunity to sell in 2000 on the back of that boom, and I wasn't going to do that again. So I then founded Green Square with 3 other partners in 2008. Not the best time for setting up a boutique M&A outfit the week that Lehman Brothers went into administration, but a great time if you're prepared to invest in relationship building, help agencies make the most of a downturn, and generally get them ready for the next wave. So when 2011 arrived, the markets eased, we were in a great place to really kick off on the M&A side. And we've never really looked back. We have offices in London and New York, and we have representation in Singapore and Sydney.
And so this year you must be celebrating your 10th birthday.
Yeah, 10th birthday on the 1st of September, which is actually the longest job I've ever had. So that's quite interesting, really. Yeah,
congratulations. Well, happy birthday for September. Earlier in this series, we've talked a lot about any new business and marketing activity being grounded in a clear set of objectives. And I know that's one of the things that when I'm working with businesses, quite often they haven't really been clear about the objectives. So which is why quite often the new business and marketing activity tends to be a bit hit and miss, or tends not quite to hit the mark, because there isn't a really clear stated path for growth. But setting objectives for new business and marketing planning and activities is one thing, but planning for succession and for exit, it requires a lot more considered thinking, and presumably you've got to start planning a lot further out. Yeah,
you really need to think about planning your exit more or less, well, not exactly when you start, but you've always got to have a vision of where you're going to go. We always say if you run your agency as if you're going to sell it tomorrow, you'll always have a great agency. The reason why is that all acquirers look for specific attributes that, if they're in place, lead to a solid and stable business. There are 7 areas they always look at, and the 7 areas are discipline. So do you do what you say you do? Mm-hmm. Market positioning. What are your USPs? How do you stand out from your peer group? Who are your clients and how are clients structured? What does your management team look like? How are they incentivized? How are the wider staff managed within the group? What are your financials? Obviously. Mm-hmm. But a key one is growth strategy, because they pay a multiple of profits to buy agencies because they believe they're going to grow in the future. Otherwise, they wouldn't pay a multiple if it's flatlining. And finally, stability. So are there any killer issues that if it happened, your agency would be finished the following day?
Okay. So thinking of the growth strategy, if that's a multiplier, what are the specifics around the growth strategy that are going to be really interesting?
Well, the first thing is we always ask agencies, what is your growth strategy? Because it's just astonishing how many just don't have one. It's doing more of the same, winning more clients, not really thinking about where your market's moving. And this then comes back to where do you want to be as a business? So I know it's hard to set 3-year goals because we don't know what the hell's going to happen. The world changes so fast these days across every landscape possible that we don't know where we are in 3 years. But we always say if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. And the analogy we have is either you're the driver of the car or you're the dog in the car. Because I sort of look at my little dog when he hops in the car and I think, you don't know where you're going. He's got absolutely no idea. I know where I'm going. I might go the scenic route to get there if there's a traffic jam or change route or something. But dear old Dennis, he doesn't know where he's going until I open the door at the other end. And he could be at the park, he could be at my father's house, he could be at the vet's. He's got no idea.
And he's still happy, but he has no idea.
He's sort of happy, but you sort of think, well, do you want to be the dog in the car that doesn't know where he's going until the door opens and you're at the vet's for the last time? So you could be, you could actually be in a, bless him. You could actually be in a situation where your destiny is just predetermined. You've got no control over it.
Yeah.
And you could have someone knock on the door to buy your business and you might not be ready for that, might not maximise value. You could have some cataclysmic event because you haven't planned for it. Your market could shift and you might have ignored it.
Yeah, so I suppose some of those, so that growth strategy isn't just around revenue and clients. It's also, it could be around discipline too.
Yeah.
Because I guess now more than ever, where everything is changing. The way consumers are buying is changing. So marketing is changing all the time. There are certain disciplines that are becoming irrelevant. There are certain agencies or agency disciplines that we've seen over time going to the wall because there just isn't the demand anymore because the technology has moved on. So I suppose that as well as bringing in new clients and revenue, it's understanding, is your offer future-proofed? Yeah,
it's very hard to sort of understand exactly where everything's going, but what you need to be thinking of is where is your market moving? And so where does it look like your market's going to, and how will you evolve your offer to compensate for that? And how will you generate new business? We sort of look at the mix of clients and new business. And, we can talk about sort of, attrition and all that sort of stuff, but it's important that you're maintaining as much of your existing client base as you can and not having a load of churn whilst adding to new business every single year, because that's what acquirers want to see. And it's kind of looking also at the bolder picture of when you go to market, understanding what an acquirer would bring to accelerate that growth.
Right.
Because when you go to market, you can't say, well, I'm just selling my agency because I want to make some money and sit on a beach. That does not resonate well.
No.
So you need to have a growth plan. You say, these are the things we can do organically, and this is what we've done in the past. Here's some we're already doing that are working, but this is what we need an acquirer for. Yeah. And it might be a complementary offer. Yeah. It might be a new geography. Yeah. So you've got to be quite specific about what you want, and then we target those acquirers on the back of what we're looking for strategically and from a chemistry point of view. But the biggest thing is when acquirers buy an agency, they want confidence that you're sort of in the middle of the S-curve of growth, and that there's future growth in there for them. That's why they pay a multiple. And also, whilst you should never sell your agency if you're not happy with the upfront, because an earn-out cannot be guaranteed. You can have a 9/11 moment that wipes the whole thing out. But you need to have some growth left in there for yourselves in terms of generating that earn-out to be confident. If an acquirer thinks you're at the top of the S-curve, they will drop the multiple, or they just won't be interested.
Thinking not just about new business, but thinking about client relationships, how do acquirers measure the stability of those client relationships?
Well, the biggest thing that we have a problem with in taking an agency to market is any client over-reliance. That's the one factor that causes the biggest wobbles, I'd say, across the piece, unless it's somebody that's an acquirer that wants a specific client because they're big in that market or needs to get into it, but there's still value limitation on that. The golden rule is you don't want any clients to make more than 20% of your fee income or your gross income. So it's fee income plus markup on any pass-throughs and things like that. And there's a simple reason for this, is most agencies make a 20% profit margin on average. People we deal with are between 15 and 40%, depending on whether it's strategic end or a more commoditized end. So if you go and lose a client that's 30% of your income and you're making a 20% margin, you've just gone negative. And you can't downsize that fast and restructure the team to pull it back. So any clients over 20% is a limiting factor. The other thing that acquirers want is visibility of future revenue. Now, as we've moved more and more to a project-driven environment as opposed to retainers, that is hard. But if you're a project-driven business, if you've got client retention, so talking 3 years plus of clients, so they don't come and go, you're not constantly churning your clients and having to drive new ones through the door, then that gives people comfort because the clients have stayed with you for a while. You've got to have really clear marketing and new business strategies. The new business strategy is a really key thing that people often ignore. They do more of the same, going to pitching, trying to win different pieces of work and discounting. Discounting's a killer. If you're making a 20% profit margin and you discount your fee quote by 10%, you've just kissed goodbye to 50% of your profit. So that's the sort of impact you're having on a 10% reduction. It doesn't sound great, but it's 50% of your profit at that level. It's important to have client contracts in place. That can be hard to get in. You've got procurement and everybody else, but when you come to sell, these are the things in due diligence that acquirers will look at. They want to see contracts in place with key clients so there's some kind of stability. Whilst you can never say you've got a year-long contract, there's always some termination clause on sort of 60 days notice or something. It just gives comfort that the business is well run. Strong CRM function. Always be in touch with your clients, past and future, just little email things, it's all part of new business strategy to retain. Clients, obviously, lifeblood of any agency.
One of the things that we talk to agencies about is being able to manage their community, their kind of inner circle, so all the people that they've met before, all the people they've worked with before, but making sure, and it's so easy today with there's hundreds of CRM products out there, to be able to keep that community intact and be able to have regular comms with those people, because that's your shortest route to revenue, is the people that already know you, right?
Absolutely. And it's kind of like it's very easy to, in the passage of time, because things move so fast, we've lost a couple of things where suddenly someone sold their agency and you sort of look at it and think, well, I didn't even have the conversation. Well, I know those people. I sort of rung them up and going, I'm surprised you didn't give us a call. And they said, well, we thought you'd forgotten about us. We haven't heard from you for a year. And I think, really? It seems like we had lunch about 3 months ago. It turns out it's a year. So you have to have a programme where you're actually constantly, and it's difficult to have cups of coffee and lunch with everybody because you never get any work done. But it is a matter of being able to touch them, find relevant things and send them to them. And so it's worth really investing in a proper marketing strategy and somebody who's constantly on top of spotting wins, so you can just send little notes to say, well done, so you've won this piece of business and how are things going. Just staying on top of it and just people being aware of you and being relevant.
Now, being able to demonstrate ROI for clients has always been tricky, and certainly some of the client satisfaction surveys that we've done for agencies, when we've asked the question about ROI, they say yes, they would love it. They would love it if the agency was measured, but they normally say, actually, but we need to get better at it as well. So I think there's a shared pain with the agencies and the clients. What's your experience about where ROI becomes important, or demonstrating ROI?
Yeah, it's a lot easier to demonstrate ROI where you have a direct relationship between what you're doing as a marketing agency in terms of point of sale and being able to measure somebody actually making that purchase. Yeah. So there's things, particularly obviously in digital, where you've got click-throughs and you've got banners, you can actually track the customer journey of where they've gone before they've bought your product and what's activated it. Those things are really strong, and that adds lots of value. However, what we are seeing at the moment is a little bit of a shift away from, in terms of consumers, a shift away from that pure point-of-sale data stuff where it's click-through, buy here. They're not stupid. People actually want creativity. And we're seeing quite a big resurgence in creativity. Creativity is a lot harder to measure in terms of its impact, because you're talking about enhancing a brand, and that takes a period of time. But people love to be entertained. Yeah. And it's less about data and tracking. It's more about, people don't mind being marketed to as long as they're being entertained and the content is relevant. And in a world of millennials that are buying, they're aware. They grew up in a digital age. They know they're being tracked. They know if they look at this content, then the quid pro quo is the data switch. So they're happy with that. So as long as it's entertaining, people will engage with it. So content is a big part, although it's less trackable in terms of direct impact on sale. Okay.
I'm wondering then how important awards are. Because there are some awards that are very much focused around impact, business impact. I'm thinking the Design Effectiveness Awards, for example. Some of them are more vanity awards, purely about the creativity. How do those things translate for an acquirer?
Awards are pretty critical, actually. Acquirers love awards. Now, I know a lot of agencies say they're rubbish, we're not entering into awards, it's all vanity, we can't be bothered. But it's one of the things that acquirers always look for. They want to see, we've got a business at the moment, actually, that's is one of the world's leading agencies in their field. They're pretty big. And the interesting thing is, one of the world's leading, everybody knows them. They've got one of the biggest, most visited sites in terms of what they do globally, and yet they haven't won a single award. And acquirers said to us, what awards have they won? We said, we haven't got any. He said, but they're so famous. I said, well, yeah. And it was a question that was asked, and they said, we've never bothered going in for them because we didn't think we needed them. But it's almost like a bit of pre-due diligence. It's like a checkbox. If you've won some of the industry's coveted awards, like the Effectiveness Awards, the FIs, the Cannes Lions, things like that, and the RIR Awards, things that Drum push out, those sort of awards, they carry some weight, and people like to see them. So, they're important.
So you talked a little bit about the over-reliance on a particular client, and I know most agencies are painfully aware of that. They're probably not as painfully aware of the 20%, so that's probably going to be difficult listening. For some people out there.
Well, there's always a mix of clients, and I think the ideal mix is to have probably 5 or 6 clients making up 50% of your fee income. Okay. So you've got a good balance across there. So somewhere between 50 and 65% of your fee income should be between 5 and 6 of your top clients. Okay. And then beneath that, you want another 10 clients that make up the next 20%. These are fairly standard industry rules. Yeah. So, some of those you're going to grow, and some of them might make you famous. And you have a look at those. What you want to avoid is the long tail. Yeah. You don't want a long tail of small clients, and these come about because you've done a few one-off projects here or there, or you're doing a little bit of work from every now and again. They take a lot of time to service, and they're often really unprofitable. So there's the age-old fame and fortune model that everyone's probably heard of. Yep. If they're going to make you famous and enhance your credentials, or there's an opportunity to grow them and make them profitable, then stick with them and see how you can do that. But if they're going to do neither, then cull them. And you don't need to be brutal about it. We had an agency we worked with, and they had a huge list. It was ridiculous. It was like, 80 clients made up 20% of this little long tail. And we said, well, we picked out the ones that actually you would possibly retain. And they just phoned them up. And they just said, look, we can't make any money out of you. Being brutal, it's really hard for us to carry on servicing you. So either you've got to double the fees you pay us, or we're going to have to recommend you go somewhere else. It's all done in a very polite way, so no relationships were broken. And 4 out of 6 that they spoke to actually stayed with them and increased their fees. But you've got to be careful because you've got to make sure you want to keep them overall.
Yes.
Because if they're a bit of a nightmare, then frankly,
You're better off without them.
The other one is profitability by client.
Okay.
Profitability by client is kind of, it's a bit of a thing to try and nail down, in that you've actually got to really analyse the time spent on those clients. But you mustn't be afraid to do that and challenge it. Longer term clients can tend to drive fees down over a period of time, or be allowed to get stuck at the same charge out rates for years while your staff costs increase.
Yes.
They can just sit there. And when you're pitching, as I mentioned earlier, it's tempting to give a discount to win the work, so don't do that.
Yeah.
When I was at Corporate Edge, we actually resigned our biggest client, and that was quite a thing. It was over $1 million of fee income, and it was 10% of our overall business at the time.
Wow.
And we let it go. And we let it go because A, we couldn't make any money out of it, but B, the staff were tired, ground down, didn't really want to work on that client anymore. And letting it go meant we had to do some restructuring, so we had to let some people go, but predominantly freelance. There wasn't many permanent hires that went as a result of this. But the impact on morale was palpable through the agency.
Yeah.
It did actually knock our revenue to the point that we slipped from number 2 to number 5 in the league tables, which was really annoying. You drop $1 million off a 12 million fee income, and that's a bit of a shift. But at the end of the day, revenue's vanity, and for us, it was all about making the agency more profitable.
And happier, by the sound of it.
Happier. Yeah, it was. It was a good move to have done.
Yeah.
But but it was one of the ones where I was slightly concerned that I might have. Let's say it wasn't the most popular amongst members of my board.
No, but you lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, just about.
So we've covered quite a lot of ground. I'm wondering if there were just a couple of areas where you think, okay, this is where founders can start to think about where they can start making some marginal gains. Are there kind of your top 3 areas that you think, okay, these are the things they can start doing tomorrow to start getting in shape for the future?
The things that are most important in terms of taking your business to market is think about stability. What you don't want to have is too many client relationships with one person. So if you've got one person that looks after some of your biggest client relationships and that person left, or heaven forbid fell ill, what would be the impact of that on your business?
Okay.
The client over-reliance thing we've talked about, it's threats to market, it's looking at where your market's moving, but it's also not about being too reactive. So if it's not about looking in the next field and saying, I think I'm going to get some revenue over there, because the grass always looks greener and often it isn't. And the minute you hop into the next field to look at that, somebody's eating your lunch in your field. And so you've got to be quite careful about what you do. So it's carefully structured new territories to go into. In terms of client profitability, that's a key one, really. You've got to look at the balance of clients, how you make your money, and you've also got to be really strong on your staff and look in terms of staff incentivisation. You need your key players properly incentivised, normally through EMI options.
Okay.
And you need to reward excellence over loyalty. And you should probably have around 20% of the equity under option to your key players. Acquirers want to see at least 20% of the equity in the hands of people that matter in the agency that will drive it forward.
Of course, because they're buying the team.
They're buying the team. The last thing they want to see is a couple of founders in their 50s with 50% each of the equity, with a big team beneath them that have no future incentivisation.
Brilliant.
There's a huge risk there for an acquirer. That they buy the business, the shareholders have every intention of staying, but in the mid-50s they say, actually, we'll just go to the beach, we're not that bothered about the earn-out. And suddenly the team is sitting there saying, well, I've worked really hard to build all this value for these people that have now left. What's in it for me? So the acquirer then has to incentivise them themselves and effectively pay twice. So incentivisation for the management team, right people in the right roles, properly incentivised and rewarded, is really critical.
Brilliant. I love that. That's excellent advice. Speaking of advice, I'm wondering what has been the best piece of advice that you've been given in your career, the one that's really stuck with you?
Well, to be honest, I've spent my life picking up brilliantly saged pieces of advice from others and plagiarising it and standing on the shoulders of giants, and I've never really thought of anything myself, to be honest. But there's a few things, because I knew you were going to ask me this question. And there's 4 things I'll come up with, if that's okay.
Yeah,
First
go
one's my father when I was a young lad. He always used to say to me, don't trust anything until it's firmly in your hand. And by that, he is particularly relating to value. And be it the value of your share portfolio, your house, your business, anything that has value, until it's turned into cash is pretty meaningless.
Okay.
Because, don't think my business is worth 10 million, and that's fine, because tomorrow it might be worth $1 million. It might be worth nothing. So it's about having, really, don't trust anything till it's firmly in your hand. Secondly, is my father-in-law. He always said change brings opportunity. And it's that's made me sit tight at various times in life when others have just run for cover. Because whenever something happens, a big element of change, people get very, very nervous. By sitting tight and watching things unfold, you either spot or get given opportunities. Yeah. So that's when things arise. That's a good one.
Lovely.
Third was one of my team saying, what do you want to get out of this? When I was ranting and raving about a situation and wanting to tear someone's head off, and after I stuck my foot through the plasterboard wall of her office, she made me sit down and calmly think about what I actually wanted to achieve from the situation we'd got in front of us. And it was just so insightful. It was so insightful. So when faced with difficult scenarios, and I always take a step back, and I think about that moment, and I work out what I want as an outcome, and then I work on my strategy to deal with it, rather than just sort of, plungering head first into something and knee-jerking at a point in the moment.
I'm wondering whether your team member has actually been reading Hilary Gallo. So Hilary was in one of our earlier episodes.
Okay.
And he used to work as a corporate lawyer,
right? And
he's written a book called The Power of Soft, which is about negotiation.
Okay.
And he talks about being able to take that step back and think about outcomes.
Yeah, where do you want to be?
Which allows you more flexibility around negotiations. So,
I don't know. Sadly, she's passed away. But she sort of looked after everyone from a HR perspective and keeping everyone in their box at Corporate Edge. So she sort of sat there. We had about 160 people, lots of stuff going on, and we'd always say, go and see Ruth if there was a problem.
Lovely.
And Ruth was the person that would calm everybody down and make everything happen. So
great advice.
But she may well have done. So,
yes.
But great advice. And finally, ask your wife, partner, or your family, including your kids if you have them. It's only in recent years I've started doing this, and I wish I'd done it a lot earlier. Because we often sort of neglect the people that are next to us who aren't involved in the business, but they're the ones that bring a really different perspective. They're not face down in the forest like you are when dealing with an issue. And my wife's a great source of advice, and my kids just look at everything from a very different and refreshing angle.
Lovely, lovely advice. And in true Small Spark Theory tradition, is there a book or a TED Talk or a film that you can recommend to our listeners?
Right, well, I rarely get time to read business books, but I've got this mate called Kevin Duncan. Do you know
yes,
you know
yes,
Kevin?
Yes.
Of course you know Kevin. And he summarises the most read business books.
Yeah.
He cuts out all the bullshit and padding and just distills them into nuts and bolts in an online blog. It's absolute genius.
Yeah.
And you can grab a year's worth of the best bits of business publishing in one afternoon if you just hop on his blog.
Yeah.
So that's always quite a good source, because then you can pick up tidbits and things. That's quite interesting.
And he's got the lovely diagrams book as well.
Yeah, he's got the diagrams books come out.
He's
He's got all of these books, and he's quite a one. He's quite prolific. But for agency owners, my favourite book is Sad Men by Dave Roberts. It's just a hilarious account of one man's journey in the advertising world from the 80s through to the millennium. And it's just how he always wanted to grow up to be an advertising copywriter and admired the genius of people like Dave Trott. And it's full of lots of names in there. People will recognise them, and some hilarious anecdotes along the way. I read it on holiday, laughed all the way through, and connected to him on LinkedIn straight afterwards. Just brilliant, brilliant book.
Lovely.
It's great fun to read. Film-wise, Pulp Fiction. Just love that movie for a number of reasons. I love the way it's random, that it doesn't start at the start or end at the end.
Yep.
So it goes round in a loop, which I think is really cool. I love the dark humour, the fact it completely reinvigorated and recast John Travolta, and you've got to love Samuel L. Jackson anyway. But most of all, the crazy and chaotic situations that the characters find themselves in and how they get out of them. And I look at that and I relate that to the sort of marketing services world and think, how did we get here and how are we going to get out of it? It's just brilliant, just brilliant.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, we will add a link to all of those on the blog. Now, we also need to talk about your Ascension Day.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, the Ascension Day. The Ascension Day is the only thing we do aside from taking agencies to market. We used to have loads of different products when we first started out. There's another thing we learnt along the way, which is useful for agency owners as well. Be really clear about what you do, and just do that one thing. We have a clip of Metallica opening Reading, And they come on stage, and James Hetfield stands up to the microphone and he says, "We're Metallica, and this is what we do." And the crowd go absolutely mad. And I sat there and thought, that's fantastic. That they do one thing and they do it really, really well. So be clear on what you do. So apart from selling companies, we run an Ascension Day. And that Ascension Day looks at the 7 things that acquirers look at, and we apply it to your agency. So people send us loads of information beforehand. There's a list of things we need. We digest it, analyse it, and then we spend a day's workshop off-site feeding it back as a proper workshop. So often agency owners will tell us we've got it completely wrong. Sometimes tell us right. Sometimes there's lots of insights. But we've never had anyone going away unhappy about it, because there's lots that happens. And through that, we develop a roadmap for growth and exit. So people leave with a clear roadmap. So it's a one-off day. We then follow up every 3 months. Good customer relationship management, which we don't charge for, just cups of coffee. How's it going along the journey?
Super. Okay, so we'll put all the contact details on the blog.
Thank you.
So people can get in touch to talk to you about that. Tony, you've been very entertaining. Thank you, and very informative. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And agencies, get in touch. We'll be giving away a copy of Tony's recommended read, Sad Men by Dave Roberts. You know what to do. Join in the conversation at Gunpowder Tweets on Twitter using the hashtag #SmallSparkTheory, and we'll pick a winner and send you a copy. You have been listening to Small Spark Theory, brought to you by Gunpowder Consulting. Join in the conversation on Twitter at Gunpowder Tweets, hashtag #SmallSparkTheory. The podcast is created and hosted by me, Lucy Mann. Our editor is Claire Aban, and our producer is Isabel Jarvis. Music is provided by Juke Deck, available at jukedeck.com. For more information and to download further episodes, head to our blog at gunpowderconsulting.com. And if you like what you hear, head to iTunes and leave us a star.